Hey guys, tonight we time travel straight into the year 1325. No passport, no Wi Fi, no hope of a hot shower. You're lying on your back in a dark, damp room. The first thing you feel is something scratching your leg, then something else scuttling across your ribs. Is it a flea, a bedbug, a mouse? You're not sure, but one thing is clear: this mattress is not memory foam. It's half rotted straw, stuffed into a rough sack, and it smells like it spent the last year in a goat pen. You roll over and inhale what might be decomposing cabbage, or possibly your cousin. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, if you're watching from somewhere that doesn't smell like fermented armpits, drop your location and local time in the comments. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're awake, but that doesn't mean you're rested. Your back is stiff, your nose is half blocked with smoke and straw dust. And there's a sharp pain where your hip's been digging into a wooden floorboard all night. Welcome to the Middle Ages. You stretch carefully so you don't kick your little brother in the face. He's sleeping next to you. So are your parents and your grandparents and a chicken, maybe a pig, depending on the day. Your home. A one-room hut made of wattle and daub, basically sticks and mud, with a bit of cow dung mixed in for good luck. The roof leaks. The walls breathe cold air in winter and hot breath in summer. There are no windows, just holes in the wall stuffed with rags or dried grass if the wind's bad. Light comes from a small fire pit in the center, flickering faintly, coughing up smoke that hasn't quite figured out how chimneys are supposed to work. And now you notice the itching. You scratch your scalp. Lice. Always lice, everyone has them. You scratch your arm. Fleas, they live in the straw. You scratch your dignity. Sorry, that's long gone. In 1325, if you have a private bed, a clean tunic, and unbitten ankles, you're royalty. You shuffle upright, trying not to step on the chicken. The floor is dirt. Not dirt-covered wood, just dirt. It's cold, lumpy, and damp. A rat skitters into a corner. You sigh. Another morning. You smell like stale beer, sweat, and goat. You don't remember the last time you bathed. No one does. Bathing is seen as suspiciously decadent. Plus, it's a whole ordeal hauling water, heating it over a fire, pouring it into a wooden tub you share with your entire family. In order, you go last. Outside, the village is stirring. Smoke curls from crooked chimneys. A bell tolls in the distance, no clocks, so bells run the schedule. Carts creak along muddy tracks, pulled by oxen that look just as tired as their drivers. You open the door well, more like lift the curtain of fabric acting as one, and are greeted by a wall of smell manure, rotting cabbage, and that one guy who thinks soap is a witch's invention. Congratulations, you're alive in 1325. But so are the fleas. And as you step outside barefoot and blinking against the gray sky, you can't help but wonder what exactly you did in a past life to deserve this. Historians still argue whether the average peasant in medieval Europe had it better or worse than their ancient counterparts, but right now, you'd trade everything for a clean towel and a latte. Your neighbor waves at you, he's missing 3 teeth and possibly some fingers, and offers a cheerful grunt. You grunt back. That's morning small talk. You both step around the latest pile of horse dung in the road. The same road where later today, someone will dump their chamber pot contents from a second-story window. Streets in 1325 are interactive. Still, there's a strange comfort in the routine. The rooster crows. The blacksmith's hammer starts clanging. Somewhere a baby screams and a dog barks at nothing. The sky is the same endless gray, but it means rain, and rain means crops. And crops mean you won't starve. Probably. The world feels smaller but heavier. You can't read. You've never seen a map. You don't know what a continent is. The furthest you've traveled is the next village over, and that was only for a funeral. News travels by gossip, and gossip is entertainment. Yesterday, someone claimed they saw a monk levitate. Today, the big news is that old Merrick's cow gave birth to twins. You'll be talking about that for weeks. You head to the stream for water, stepping around more dung, this time human. Someone clearly had a rough night. The stream's supposed to be clean, but everyone knows it's also where the tanners dump waste and where kids splash around half naked in the summer. You drink from it anyway. That's the thing. Everything here is dangerous, uncomfortable, or smells weird. But you don't question it. It's not like there's another option. This is life in 1325. It's dirty, it's loud, it's smelly, but it's yours. And for a brief moment, as the sun begins to rise over the thatched rooftops and the world grumbles awake, you feel something close to peace. Then you scratch your leg again. You close the rickety door behind you, or rather drop the scratchy cloth curtain back over the hole, and re-enter your home where the idea of privacy is more myth than memory. The concept doesn't exist because neither do walls. The room is one space, eating, sleeping, birthing, dying, all done right there in front of everyone. And yes, you do see your dad scratching his rear as he wakes up next to the fireplace. Good morning. Your family includes your parents, your 2 younger siblings, your grandmother, who spits into the fire for luck, and your cousin Edwin, who moved in 5 winters ago just for a bit and never left. You gave up trying to get your own space around age 6. Instead, you've mastered the art of silent internal screaming while making eye contact with someone clipping their toenails 3 feet away. The hearth is in the center, a blackened circle of rock soot and smoldering wood ash. It's the warmest part of the house in winter, but in summer, it's just one more excuse to sweat. Everything smells like smoke, because smoke never really leaves. Not your clothes, not your hair, not the baby's blanket, which now doubles as your pillow. The room flickers with orangey light from the embers. No candles yet. You can't afford that luxury on a peasant's budget. Your sister stirs. She's about 7 and already muttering in her sleep. Your brother is drooling on your shared straw mat. Grandma is snoring like a warhorse, her head tilted back at an impossible angle. And the chicken from earlier? Yeah, it just pooped in the corner again. You sigh. There's no door for the outhouse. Actually, there's no outhouse. There's just a spot behind the house where the grass no longer grows. Even that is shared with your family, the neighbors, and probably the village dog. If you're feeling fancy, there's a wooden screen you can drag out for a whisper of modesty. But modesty is for nobles and saints. You change clothes, sort of. Your tunic is the same one you wore yesterday, and the day before, and the day before that. It hangs from a wooden peg, still damp with yesterday's sweat. You hold your breath and pull it over your head. Congratulations, you've added 3 new flea bites just by getting dressed. But hey, at least it covers you. You shift to tie a length of rope around your waist because buttons are rare and zippers don't exist. Your cousin, still half asleep, lets one rip from under his cloak. No one reacts, not even the dog. This is life in close quarters. Every burp, every cough, every dream about potatoes shared. There are no curtains unless you count the tattered cloth someone hung up to hide the basket of onions. You've never been alone, not in the bathroom, not during meals, not even while sleeping. Once, during a particularly bad storm, you slept pressed shoulder to shoulder with 8 people and a sheep. You dreamt you were drowning in wool. If you want to change clothes with a scrap of privacy, you'll need to duck behind the firewood stack outside. And even then, your neighbor's nosy daughter will probably watch from her window and report the details to half the village by noon. Gossip is currency here, and every sneeze gets audited. You try to imagine something called a room of one's own. Sounds made up. A luxury for monks or rich lords with too many thoughts. You've heard of castles with entire chambers just for sleeping or eating or reading. What a wild idea. Reading in peace with a door that closes. Historians still argue whether most people in your village even knew those rooms existed, or if they were just folklore passed down by traveling peddlers. A rooster outside crows for the 3rd time. Everyone groans. It's time to get up. Your mother starts ladling last night's stew into clay bowls. Your father spits into the fire like Grandma taught him, says something about the weather and starts pulling on his work boots, one of which belonged to someone else in another century. You eat with your hands, sharing one bowl between 3 people. The food's hot, bland, and slightly burnt on one side. A miracle, really. You slurp quickly because it's your turn to collect water, and you want to beat the rush. Your cousin scratches himself inappropriately while staring into the fire. You don't even flinch anymore. Your little sister starts telling a story about a dancing bear someone saw 2 villages over. She's standing on a log, pretending to be the bear. Your brother laughs so hard he snorts pottage out of his nose. You wipe your face with a bit of cloth that might have been clean in 1310. There is joy here in this chaotic little hovel, crammed full of bodies and noise and smells and secrets. You just wish sometimes that there was a door to shut, somewhere to sit without being sat on, somewhere to cry without being asked if you're dying. But even dying is a public affair. Your whole family will be there, in this room, watching. You step outside, clutching the empty pail. You've memorized the rhythm of this world, the sounds, the smells, the accidental nudity. You wave at your neighbor who's also trying to change behind her laundry line. She waves back, shrugs. You both understand. Privacy. That's a word the future will invent. For now, you settle for a moment behind a bush, humming to yourself, pretending just for a second that no one's watching. You wake up itchy, half-starved, and somehow already dirty. The room is crowded, the air is stale, and your cousin just knocked over the goat's water bucket in his sleep. It's fine, nothing new. But now nature calls. And in 1325, that's a problem. There is no bathroom, no porcelain toilet, no sink, No faucet, no soap dispenser that smells like fake lavender. What you have is a bucket. Maybe, if your family's lucky. Otherwise, it's the back field, or if it's raining, the front field. Everyone's got their preferences. You tiptoe over snoozing limbs and step outside into the cool morning fog. The ground squishes under your bare feet, definitely not morning dew. You wince and glance toward your usual spot behind the compost heap near the twisted old tree. It's not exactly private, but at least it's out of view of the road. Mostly. You crouch, you do your business, and just as you're finishing, someone opens their window and dumps the contents of their own bucket straight into the street. It splashes like a nightmare. A rooster screams. The town reeks. Like, aggressively. The street is a stew of manure offal, spoiled food, and mystery fluids. You pass a man scraping something off his shoe with a stick. He nods at you like you're in the same club. You are. You've heard stories of towns where people pay someone to carry a big pot through the streets to collect waste, but that's not your village. Here, everyone just tosses it. Gardy-loo, they shout out the window if they're feeling polite. It's medieval for, hey, don't be under this window in 5 seconds. You learn to walk close to the walls, never the middle of the street. That's where the splash zone lives. And if you think it's just human waste, oh no. Add in dead rats, old soup pig guts, and that one boot no one wants to touch. The town is one big olfactory attack. The air tastes like compost. You breathe through your mouth, which isn't better. Now it tastes like compost. You try not to step in anything, but let's be real, you step in something. Immediately, you scrape your foot on a rock and keep moving. There's no running water to rinse with, no garden hose, no cute bird bath. Just a muddy ditch behind a barn that may or may not contain more bacteria than actual water, but you go anyway, because it's that. Or spend the day smelling like the road. And honestly, you probably already do. Back home, your younger brother is using the family bucket. He's 5, he misses. You sigh. Someone will clean it up later, probably you. Chamber pots get emptied once or twice a day, flung out the door with minimal ceremony, splash, done. And you hope no one's walking by, but if they are, that's their problems. Public latrines exist technically, but not in small villages like yours. In larger towns, it's a big pit surrounded by wood planks, communal, always full, and always buzzing with flies the size of grapes. And there's no separation. You sit next to a stranger, exchange awkward glances, and try to pretend you're just enjoying the scenery. Toilet paper, not a thing. You might use leaves, moss a scrap of cloth if you're fancy. A smooth stick if it's been whittled down enough. Some people use hay, others the edge of their tunic, and hope no one notices. You develop an appreciation for flat stones. Washing your hands isn't really a cultural norm. Sure, monks might do it, and the upper class has bowls and basins. But out here, you wipe your hands on your tunic and carry on. That same tunic you'll wear to dinner and possibly sleep in. The cycle is complete. People believe bad smells cause disease miasma, they call it. So there's no talk of germs, bacteria, or hygiene. Just the belief that if it smells bad, it must be dangerous. Which is ironic because literally everything smells bad. You carry a sachet of herbs tied to your belt, hoping it will protect you. Spoiler, it won't. The river runs through the village murky and slow. Kids splash in it. So do pigs. It's where you wash clothes, fetch drinking water, and occasionally dump waste when the road is too full. Sometimes someone finds a floating chicken, or worse, but no one talks about it. You take your pail and head to the well. It's one of the few places people line up each morning. You nod politely to old Edith, who's already telling anyone who will listen about how her niece saw a demon in the woods. You fill your bucket and try not to think about what's floating in it. You'll boil it later. Or drink ale instead, which is just safer. Weak ale is the medieval answer to everything, even breakfast. Historians still argue whether people in your era really understood the connection between filth and disease, or if they just tolerated it out of necessity. One thing's for sure, no one expects to feel clean. Clean is for saints nobles and people who die young. By the time you're back home, your little sister's spilled the soup, your cousin is using the fire poker to scratch something inappropriate, and your dad's already asking if anyone saw where he left his one good sock. You take a deep breath, immediate regret, and settle in for the day. The bucket's full again. It's still early, but the village has fully awakened. Fires crackle, livestock bleat, and children cry because someone stole their favorite stick again. You've returned from your grim morning ritual behind the compost heap, and your stomach, despite everything, has the audacity to growl. Time for breakfast. Now let's manage those expectations. There's no cafe, no croissant, no cold-pressed juice in a mason jar. What awaits you is pottage, a grayish, lumpy stew that's been bubbling away in the same pot for the past 4 days. Maybe longer. It's never fully emptied, just topped up with whatever your family could scrounge from the garden or the woods. A few onions, some turnip skins, a dead mouse once, but you don't talk about that. The pot hangs over the fire on a soot-covered hook. Steam rises in lazy, suspicious swirls. Your mother stirs it with a wooden ladle so worn, it's more stick than spoon. You sit cross-legged on the dirt floor and hold out your bowl, which is actually a shallow piece of broken pottery. You're handed a scoop. It lands with a splat. It smells edible. Barely. You blow on it knowing full well that temperature is the least of your concerns. You take a bite. The texture is somewhere between porridge and regret. It tastes like wet cardboard seasoned with disappointment. There's something crunchy in it. You hope it's a barley husk. Next to the bowl, your mother slaps a piece of bread into your hand. Calling it bread is generous. It's more like a weapon. Flat, dark, and so hard it could knock out a chicken. You try to take a bite and nearly dislocate your jaw. This bread has seen things. You chew, slowly, carefully. Your teeth aren't great and you'd like to keep the remaining few. You dip the bread into the pottage, which softens it just enough to make it slightly less dangerous. Your brother across the fire is doing the same, staring into space like a war veteran. You lock eyes. He nods. Solidarity. And then comes the drink. A mug of ale. Yes, ale. At sunrise. Because water is a death sentence. It's filled with invisible nightmares that make your insides explode. Weak ale is the safer option, barely alcoholic, vaguely grain-flavored, and slightly warm. It's made in barrels in the shed with yeast that's older than you are. Still, it's liquid. You sip it and try not to think about the chunks. You eye the family dog who's licking the floor with more enthusiasm than you can muster. He's already eaten a boot this week. His standards are low. Historians still argue whether pottage was truly the medieval peasant staple or just the most commonly recorded option because it was so forgettable. Either way, you're stuck with it. Meat rare and precious. It's for feasts, bribes, or funerals. Eggs seasonal. Cheese if you're lucky. Most days your food pyramid is entirely root vegetables and rye. You finish your bowl and hand it to your sister who licks it before washing it with a damp cloth and yesterday's bath water. You try not to think about it. Hygiene is aspirational at best. Still chewing, you glance around the room. Your cousin Edwin is eating straight from the pot with a broken ladle. Your grandmother is gnawing her bread like a beaver. The baby is eating ashes. You sigh. Just another medieval morning. Occasionally someone in the village gets lucky. A bit of bacon, a chicken that didn't survive the night, maybe even a rabbit caught in a snare. On those days, the pottage gets an upgrade. Suddenly, it smells like something you'd actually want to eat. And everyone gathers around the fire like moths to a miracle. Not today, though. Today is root vegetable roulette. You hear a bell ringing in the distance church. Another reminder that your stomach might be empty, but your soul needs feeding too. Your mother crosses herself. Your brother burps the Lord's Prayer. You finish your ale and wipe your mouth on your sleeve. And somehow, despite the lack of flavor, despite the near tooth injury, despite the questionable ingredients, you're grateful. You're fed. You're not sick. You're not starving. Yet, you take your bowl outside and set it by the door. Maybe you'll scrape it out later with a stick and hope to find something crunchy that isn't a beetle. Another day begins fueled by barley mush, stale bread, and blind optimism. Breakfast in 1325. The most important meal you wish you could forget. After surviving breakfast emotionally and dentally, it's time to get dressed. Or more accurately, it's time to keep wearing what you already have on. Because in 1325, your wardrobe isn't exactly bursting with options. You have one outfit, one, singular. A tunic made of thick, scratchy wool that's been washed maybe twice since you were born. It smells like mold, smoke, and wet animal, and it itches like it was designed by someone who actively hates skin. You don't even remember the original color, somewhere between brown and disappointment. There's no underlayer, no cozy cotton, just wool on flesh. Your thighs chafe like angry badgers. Your armpits have formed their own climate. In winter, the tunic is barely warm enough. In summer, it's like wearing a hot sponge. But it's yours. It was your older cousin's before you and someone else's before him. If you're lucky, it might still fit after another growth spurt. If not, you just cinch it tighter with rope and hope no one notices your knees poking out. You tie a belt again rope. Or leather if your family's doing well this year. It's mostly to keep your tunic from flapping open in the wind. Modesty isn't a huge deal, but no one wants to see your medieval undies. Which, by the way, don't exist for most peasants. Commando is the default setting. Shoes optional. Luxurious, really. If you own a pair, they're rough leather, cracked, and shaped like a toddler's drawing of a foot. Most people go barefoot through mudstones, thorns, dung, and whatever else the street threw up this morning. Your soles are calloused enough to strike sparks. Your feet are filthy, always. You wash them once a week if you're lucky. And the water isn't needed for something important like boiling turnips or extinguishing a roof fire. The dirt just becomes part of you, a kind of natural armor. Same with your hands. They're cracked, stained, and permanently embedded with soil. You gave up on having clean fingernails years ago. Your clothes never quite dry. There's always a dampness like the tunic holds on to the memory of every sweat rainstorm and spilled bowl of soup. And the smell. It walks into a room 5 seconds before you do, but so does everyone else's. No one smells good. If someone does you assume they're nobility clergy or hiding something, you wrap a hooded cloak around your shoulders. It's made from coarse wool and is about as waterproof as a sponge. But it helps in the wind. It also doubles as a blanket, pillow, baby sling, an emergency towel. Multi-purpose fashion at its medieval finest. You glance at your brother. He's wearing his tunic backward again. No one corrects him. Your cousin is already outside, shivering barefoot, holding his shoes in his hands to keep them from getting muddy. You wonder briefly why. Then you remember they have holes and he doesn't want to get wet inside the shoes too. Lice are part of life. They live in your seams. They crawl across your scalp during dinner. You scratch constantly. Your friends scratch constantly. Everyone has that one moment in the day where they stop, close their eyes, and just go to town behind their ear. Pure relief. You might own a second tunic. Might being the operative word. It's probably patched beyond recognition, only worn on feast days, or when your first one's being de-fleed over the fire. That process takes hours. You hold it over the smoke until the bugs drop off, then beat it with a stick. Medieval dry cleaning at its most violent. Laundry is rare and brutal. Clothes are scrubbed with lye or ashes in cold water, then wrung out and dried on bushes or rocks. The end result is stiff, vaguely gray fabric that feels like cardboard and smells like it's been camping for a year. And here's the kicker, no one cares. Fashion is for nobles, and even their outfits are more about status than comfort. You've heard tales of lords in velvet and silk with buttons and embroidery and actual colors. Sounds fake, like dragons or tax relief. You're not dressing to impress. You're dressing not to freeze. And even that's a gamble. In winter you layer another cloak, a hat if you can afford one, maybe straw, stuffed into your tunic for insulation. You sleep in your clothes, sweat in your clothes, and eventually get buried in them. Historians still debate how often medieval peasants changed outfits. Some say once a week. Others say once a season. Your guess, whenever it fell off and had to be re-sewn, you scratch your arm, then your back, then the side of your leg. A flea jumps. You pretend not to see it. No point. It's just going to bring friends. Still, There's a weird sort of pride in your one and only tunic. It's ugly, it's smelly, it's possibly alive, but it's yours. And when you walk into the village squinting against the smoke and the cold wind, you'll be just one more figure in a sea of earth-toned, wool-clad survivors. You adjust your rope belt, shrug your shoulders, and step into the day, head held high, tunic flapping, feet already numb. Medieval fashion, one size fits no one, but it gets the job done. You're walking to the fields, or maybe to the market, chewing on a piece of that unforgiving bread from breakfast when a sharp jolt stabs your molar. Ah yes, the familiar medieval toothache. It's less a medical condition and more a lifestyle. Your teeth are a situation. By age 25, you've likely lost half of them. The ones you still have, blackened, chipped, and tilted at such strange angles, they resemble a fence built during an earthquake. There's no toothbrush in your world, no toothpaste, no floss, no mouthwash, and definitely no dentist appointment. The best you've got is rubbing your gums with a cloth soaked in wine and praying to Saint Apollonia, the patron saint of toothaches. She had all her teeth pulled out during martyrdom, so she gets it. Your breath. Let's not talk about it. Just know that everyone smells like compost and regret. Mouths are basically tiny disease factories filled with rotting food, infected gums, and maybe a rogue beetle if you sleep with your mouth open. But no one judges, because everyone's in the same rotten-toothed boat. Some people chew mint leaves or rinse with vinegar. You've tried both. The mint was nice until it ran out. The vinegar felt like gargling lava. There's also this thing where people chew sticks, frayed twigs, to scrape their teeth with. You found one once. It splintered immediately. You still have a piece stuck in your gum. Toothaches are just part of life. You don't complain about them unless you're ready to do something about it. And by something we mean ask your barber to yank it out. Yes, your barber. The same guy who cuts your hair lances boils and occasionally does bloodletting with a bowl and a hopeful attitude. He's got a rusty iron hook, a strong grip, and zero training. Anesthesia. That's a word you don't know yet. The process goes like this. You sit on a stool. He holds your head. Someone else holds your arms. He shouts something cheerful like, "Think of the saints," and then yanks. If you're lucky, he gets the right tooth on the first try. If you're very lucky, he doesn't slip and knock out 3 extras. The pain is indescribable. The infection that follows is worse. People die from this, from a tooth. A small, inflamed, miserable lump of enamel becomes a deadly threat. Historians still argue whether medieval people understood the connection between tooth infections and systemic illness, but they certainly understood that swollen jaw bad news. And even if you don't get an infection, you're still left with a gaping hole, a bleeding gum, and a jaw that doesn't quite line up anymore. But hey, no more toothache. Victory. The rich have better options. Powdered pearls, honey-based rinses, even gold dental work if you're really fancy. Monks sometimes record recipes for dental salves made of herbs, ashes, and animal fat. You tried making one once. It made everything worse. Your diet doesn't help. Bread so hard it fights back bits of bone and stew, and no refrigeration to speak of. Every bite is a gamble. You've chipped more than one tooth on a mystery lump in your pottage. Your cousin once lost a molar on a particularly stale turnip. It happens. You dream of apples, fresh ones, crisp, sweet, not bruised. But even when you find one, you have to nibble it sideways like a rodent, avoiding the sore spots. You envy children with baby teeth, they get a full reset. You just wait for yours to fall out naturally or unnaturally. There's a woman in the village who swears by rinsing with salt water every morning. Her breath still smells like fermented leeks, but she has most of her teeth. Coincidence, miracle, witchcraft. Depends who you ask. You try not to smile too much. Not because you're sad, though, fair, but because a big, toothy grin is basically a horror movie. Your gums are inflamed. Your teeth lean like tired gravestones. And yet, somehow, this is normal. Expected. No one has dazzling whites. No one's ever heard of dental care. You're lucky if your teeth don't actually fall out while talking. At night, you sleep with your mouth open. You wake up with a dry tongue and the taste of old bread and shame. You scratch at a sore spot and wonder if this is the one that's going to get pulled next. You check your reflection in a tarnished piece of metal. Yep, still crooked, still sad. Still you manage. You chew carefully, favoring one side of your mouth. You drink ale to numb the pain. You avoid the barber unless it's absolutely necessary. And every once in a while, when the pain isn't so bad, you allow yourself a laugh. A crooked, half-toothed, medieval laugh. Because even in 1325, with your gums screaming and your breath offensive enough to scare rats, you're still alive. And you still have enough teeth to bite into something if it comes to it. Preferably not bread. The sun is barely above the horizon, and already your back hurts. Maybe from the cold, maybe from the mattress made of regret. But mostly because it's time to work. And in 1325, that means all day, every day, until the day you simply stop getting up. You head to the fields with your father and brother, each of you carrying a crude wooden hoe or mattock. Your tunic itches, your feet are wet, and your stomach is still arguing with that breakfast stew. But you go. There's no choice, no breaks, no weekends. The idea of free time is about as real as a unicorn with a pension. The village revolves around the land. You farm because your parents farmed and their parents before them. Your life is tethered to the seasons like a cow on a rope. Spring means planting. Summer means weeding. Autumn means harvesting. Winter. You just try not to die. Every day there's work to be done, tilling, sowing, reaping, mending, hauling, boiling, baking, feeding, fixing, praying, repeating. Always repeating. Children work too. You were out in the fields by age 5, chasing off crows and carrying turnips like it was a game. It wasn't. Your little sister drags a bucket bigger than her head sloshing with goat milk and effort. Your older brother sharpens tools with a foot pedal while gnawing on what might be a beet. Maybe. Your mother. She works more than anyone. She wakes before dawn, tends. The fire prepares food, churns, butter feeds animals, patches, clothes, soothes babies, and somehow still makes it to the field, and then back again, then to the market, then to the neighbors to help with the birth, then home again to cook. Mental health. Ha. Physical health optional. No one asks how you're feeling. You're here. You're vertical. That's good enough. Sore, drink more ale. Bleeding, wrap it in a rag. Sad, pray harder. Rest is a luxury reserved for the dead, and even then, someone has to dig the grave. You hoe rows of stubborn earth, sweat pouring down your back despite the morning chill. You can hear the blacksmith hammering in the distance. The rhythm is almost musical if you squint hard enough. Someone yells about a missing pig. A dog barks. A crow caws from the fence post like it knows something you don't. Lunch is hours away. There's no whistle, no official break time. You just keep going until someone collapses or the bell rings from the church. If you're lucky, your mother brings bread and a hunk of cheese wrapped in a cloth that smells suspiciously like the goat stall. You eat with dirty hands sitting on a stump, staring at a cloud and wondering what it would be like to float. But you don't stop long. If the harvest is late, people starve. If the fence breaks, animals escape. If the roof leaks, it collapses. You don't get to procrastinate. There's always something to fix, carry, chop, sweep, milk, mend, or curse at under your breath. The elderly still work bent slow, whispering about the old days, which were somehow worse. One of them is sharpening a scythe. Another is weaving baskets with fingers as gnarled as the twigs. Retirement isn't real. You work until your body gives out. And then if you're lucky, someone notices. Even the local priest, supposedly a man of the cloth, spends part of his day digging in the garden. Monks make beer, raise chickens, copy manuscripts. Idleness is sin. Labor is holy. Blisters, a blessing. Calluses, a badge of honor. Limping, a sign you're contributing. You know of nobles far away who manage estates from cushioned chairs, who wear clean clothes and smell like fruit. They hunt for fun. You hunt for survival. They complain about gout. You haven't had the luxury of naming your aches. Historians still debate whether medieval peasants truly lived in constant toil, or if there were hidden moments of leisure festivals, feast days storytelling. And yes, those happen. But even on a holiday, someone has to feed. The animals fetch the water, clean the wounds, hush the children. It's never nothing. It's never still. You pull weeds until your fingers bleed. You carry water until your shoulders scream. You patch the fence with half-rotted wood and prayer. You laugh when the ox farts. You cry when it kicks your shin. Then you keep going. At sunset, the village glows in gold and smoke. You trudge home, body aching, hands full of nettles and splinters. You pass neighbors doing the same. Everyone looks exhausted. Everyone's hungry. But tomorrow you'll all do it again. Because this is life. You work until you die. And even then, someone still has to bury you. Hopefully not on a Tuesday they're busy in the fields. The sun has dipped below the horizon, but you're not relaxing. Not really. You're just trading one discomfort for another. Because in 1325, weather isn't a topic for polite small talk, it's a threat, a full-time adversary. The sky doesn't care about your feelings. And your house offers as much protection as a wet cloak in a thunderstorm. In winter, the cold seeps into your bones like it's trying to move in permanently. There's no insulation. Your walls are sticks mud and the memory of warmer days. You sleep in all your clothes, your one tunic, your cloak, maybe even a burlap sack over your feet, if you can find one. You curl up with your siblings for warmth, tangled in a communal heap of elbows and cold breath. Your only heat source is a fire that smokes more than it blazes. Sometimes it goes out in the middle of the night. You wake up shivering, coughing, and wondering if this is how bears feel before hibernation. Your socks, if you have any, are always damp. You dry them by the fire, and they steam ominously while still managing to smell like sour milk. You wake with frost on your eyelashes. Your breath forms tiny clouds, and you draw faces in the frost on the walls just to stay sane. Going outside is an exercise in bravery. The wind slices through your clothes. Your hands go numb. Your nose drips like a leaky roof. You walk with your arms tucked in like a suffering penguin. And yet you still have to go. The animals need feeding. The firewood needs chopping. No one cares if there's snow in your boots. Work doesn't pause for hypothermia, and in summer, the heat doesn't play nice either. Your home turns into a sweatbox. The roof traps warm air like a guilt-ridden confession, and the walls radiate heat from dawn till dusk. You strip down to the bare minimum of decency, sweat pooling in places you forgot you had, and still feel like you're being slow roasted by the sun itself. The fields become dusty ovens. You squint under the unforgiving glare of the sky, your skin baking your feet burning against hot ground. Flies swarm. Your water smells like old wood and tastes worse. You drink it anyway, hoping it won't give you the runs again. Your clothes don't breathe, they smother. Your wool tunic becomes a wearable sauna. You think longingly of shade, there's very little. Trees are precious and often chopped down for firewood. You consider lying down in a puddle, but then you remember the pig used it earlier. And then there's the rain. Rain means leaks, puddles, and mud so thick it pulls the shoes off your feet. Rain seeps through your roof and into your dreams. It's either a blessing or a disaster, depending on how much falls and how quickly. A soft drizzle, great for crops. A sudden downpour, your roof collapses, your thatch slips. Your straw bed becomes a swamp. You huddle with your family around the fire, dripping, steaming, occasionally swearing. Someone wrings out a blanket that now weighs more than the goat. You try to patch the leak with moss. It leaks anyway. Spring and fall are better, cooler, calmer, but they bring their own chaos. Spring is when everything wakes up, weeds, bugs, mold. Fall is when everything starts to die again. The wind picks up. The sky darkens early. The harvest has to be done before frost comes. You sleep less. You sweat and freeze in the same week. Historians still argue whether peasants in the Middle Ages adapted well to the climate, or just survived through sheer stubbornness. Honestly, probably both. You've never known anything different. You don't talk about comfort. You talk about how long you can keep your cloak dry or whether the wind will snap the fence again. You develop tricks. You stuff straw in your shoes for warmth. You sleep with hot stones wrapped in cloth. You cover your head with a scrap of sack. You place bricks near the fire and then put them in your bed. You learn how to ignore numb fingers, sunburnt shoulders, and the perpetual sniffles that never quite go away. Weather forecasts don't exist. You look at the sky, smell the air, listen to the birds. Old Marcy says her knee predicts storms, and she's been right 6 times this year. Good enough. You carry firewood even when the sun's out. You patch your roof every few weeks just in case. And you never ever trust a warm day in February. You end the day half soaked, half dusty, fully exhausted. Your body is sore in ways you can't describe. Your socks squelch. You hang them by the fire. They'll still be damp tomorrow, but maybe less damp. You lie down on your lumpy mat, pull your cloak tighter, and try not to think about the drip, drip, drip hitting the floor. Welcome to Extreme Weather Survival Medieval Edition. No HVAC, no forecast, just you, your tunic, and the fury of nature. It's morning again, and your throat feels like you've swallowed a handful of hay. Naturally, you're thirsty, but in 1325, reaching for a glass of water is a high-stakes gamble. Because the water, it wants you dead. You step outside, squinting at the early light and stretching your sore arms. Your family's water barrel is nearly empty. The cloth draped over the top to keep bugs out has done approximately nothing. Inside, the water is murky and smells faintly of cabbage and rusted nails. You fill a wooden cup anyway. You swirl it. Something swirls back. No one drinks water raw unless they've accepted their fate. Streams, rivers, even wells are teeming with microscopic horror. Of course, you don't know about germs. You don't know what a bacterium is. But you know that your neighbor drank straight from the stream last week and has been making death noises ever since. So no, not today. That's why everyone drinks ale, weak ale, brewed at home, boiled during the process, safer than water by a long shot. It's barely alcoholic, but still, it tastes like warm, grainy sadness with a hint of foot. You drink it with every meal, even breakfast, even children, even monks. You've never seen anyone drink just water unless they're a priest in the middle of Lent or out of options. You know the story of Father Thomas. He fasted and drank only water for 7 days. On the 8th, he nearly turned inside out from dysentery. His sermons afterward were mostly about the cleansing fire of the Lord, which we all understood to mean don't drink from the bucket behind the goat pen. Bathing rare, suspicious even. Some say it opens your pores and lets the disease spirits in. Others argue it's just too much work. They're not wrong. First you haul the water, then you heat it, which means more firewood, more smoke, and more time. You fill a wooden tub that leaks slightly from the bottom, and by the time it's ready, it's already gone lukewarm. And remember, you're sharing that tub. Yes, bathing is a family affair. Everyone takes turns in the same water, oldest to youngest. By the time it's your go, it's more of a broth than a bath. You once found a toe in it. No one's sure who it belonged to, so you don't bathe often. Maybe once a month, twice a year if there's a drought. You rub yourself down with a cloth. You change your tunic and hope that counts. You splash your face with water from the barrel, carefully avoiding eye contact with the spider floating on the surface. And yet, despite it all, you still smell better than the tanner. He spends his days knee-deep in rotting animal hides and urine. Yes, actual urine. It's part of the leather curing process. His house is downwind. You give it a wide berth. To clean your dishes, you rinse them in water. that's also been used to wash vegetables tools and probably feet. You wipe them dry with a cloth that's seen more pottage than the pot. Then you stack them next to the hearth and hope the heat kills whatever's still crawling. If you're traveling, you bring ale or wine with you, or you drink from a communal cup at the local inn, one that's passed from hand to hand, lip to lip, with nothing but a wipe from someone's sleeve in between. But at least the wine is sharp enough to kill a few things. Some villagers try to filter water through cloth or add herbs to it. One woman swears by a sprig of rosemary in every cup. Another carries a polished rock and claims it pulls out the evil. Historians still argue whether these home remedies helped or just made people feel better while they were dying. Every now and then someone builds a new well and the whole village celebrates. Until 2 weeks later, when old Merrick starts foaming at the mouth, and everyone remembers that wells can go bad too. Rainwater is collected in barrels, but unless the barrel is new, it's not, or covered, it's not. It becomes a mosquito hatchery in no time. You've seen frogs in it. You've seen things that don't have names. But water is water. You boil it, if you can strain it if you can't, and drink it if you must. And yet somehow you survive. Maybe it's luck. Maybe it's the ale. Maybe your immune system has evolved into a medieval fortress guarded by tiny, angry monks. Whatever it is, you're still standing. You take another sip of ale, grimace, and get back to work. The water may be out to get you, but you've got chores to do. And at the end of the day, you're grateful for the one liquid that won't try to dissolve your intestines, even if it does taste like soggy hay. You wake up with a fever. Your skin is hot, your joints ache, and your mouth tastes like the inside of a boot. In 1325, this is not just an inconvenience, this is a crossroads. Because being sick means rolling the dice between divine mercy and a medieval medical nightmare. You lie on your mat wrapped in your one damp cloak, sweating like a pig and shivering like a leaf. Your grandmother places a hand on your forehead, mutters something about the humors being out of balance, and fetches the local healer because there are no doctors here. Not the kind you're thinking of. The village physician is also the baker's brother, the town's only literate person besides the priest, and an enthusiastic amateur in all things bleeding related. He arrives, smelling of onions, and damp wool, carrying a pouch filled with sharp things and a jar of leeches. You try to run, but your legs won't cooperate, so you lie there, and you suffer. The first step in almost any treatment, bloodletting. Obviously. Because clearly your illness is caused by an excess of blood, or yellow bile, or phlegm, or your sins. Depends who you ask. The doctor selects a rusty-looking lancet, mutters a prayer, and slices open a vein in your arm like he's peeling a carrot. You watch your life leak into a chipped bowl and try not to scream. If you're lucky, it ends there. If not, it's time for the leeches. They're big, slimy, and enthusiastic. He places them on your chest. They wriggle. You cry. Your little brother watches with morbid curiosity and offers to name one. You name it despair, still feverish. No problem. The next remedy involves a poultice of moldy bread and lard wrapped in linen and tied around your head. It smells awful and might be attracting insects, but someone swears it helped their cousin once. That cousin died, but not from the poultice, so it counts as a success. You're also given a mixture of herbs wormwood rue and something your healer found growing behind the latrine. He boils it into a thick, bitter tea and pours it down your throat while holding your nose. You gag, your stomach flips, you nearly vomit. He nods, satisfied. It's working, he says. The priest stops by to check on your soul. Because honestly, this could go either way. He anoints your forehead with oil, prays over you in Latin, and asks if you've confessed your sins. You try to remember all of them, but it's a long list and your brain is melting. You lie in bed for days, or maybe hours, time blurs. People keep feeding you ale and hot water mixed with honey and garlic. At one point, someone burns dried rosemary in the room to chase out the bad spirits. Another person smudges your feet with ash in the shape of a cross. You're pretty sure someone tried to whisper a spell under your pillow. It doesn't help, but at least it smells nice. Somewhere in there the fever breaks. Or maybe it doesn't. You start to hallucinate. The ceiling turns into a field of wheat. The chicken starts talking. You ask your sister to fetch a witch. She brings the neighbor's cat instead. It hisses. You take that as a no. Historians still argue whether medieval treatments were genuinely harmful or just ineffective. The truth is probably both. The theory of the four humors, blood, phlegm, black bile, yellow bile, guided everything. Illness wasn't about germs. It was about imbalance or punishment from God. Or maybe an angry fairy. If your condition doesn't improve, more aggressive measures are taken. Cupping, hot irons, trepanation, drilling a hole in your skull to let the bad air out. Fortunately, you're not that sick. Yet. Wounds cauterized with hot metal, infections sliced open and drained, no gloves, no soap, broken bones, set with wooden splints and prayers, anesthesia, huh? Your only options are getting drunk or biting down on leather. You've heard of someone biting through their own tongue. You decide to keep your teeth clenched. Eventually, you start to feel better. Maybe it was the tea. Maybe it was the sweating. Maybe you just got lucky. Your healer takes full credit, of course. The priest thanks God. Your grandmother says it's because she rubbed onion on your feet when no one was looking. But deep down, you know it wasn't the medicine. The medicine was just pain in a bottle. You survived in spite of it, not because of it. You sit up slowly, dizzy and sore. The leeches are gone. So is your dignity. But you're alive. You hobble to the doorstep outside and let the sun warm your face. The village is still there, still smelly, still loud. Someone throws a chamber pot out a window. You smile, and then you cough. Let's hope that's just the smoke. Evening falls over the village, and your stomach, despite everything it's endured, dares to grumble again. Dinner is coming, or at the very least the next edible event. But in 1325, every meal is an act of hope, a leap of faith, and a minor gastrointestinal threat. You return from the fields, hands blistered, feet caked in mud, and the unmistakable scent of sweat-soaked wool trailing behind you like a sad banner. The kitchen, if you can call it that, is just a smoky corner of your one-room hut. The hearth is burning low, and someone's already stirring the pot of, you guessed it, pottage. Same base as breakfast, same flavor, same questionable consistency. But tonight, it's a little different. Someone found a bone. Not meat, just the bone. But it was boiled with enthusiasm, And now your stew has a faint whisper of livestock memory flavor, a luxury. You sit down on the floor. There are no chairs. The dog is eyeing your bowl, and your cousin is already gnawing on his portion, like a man who hasn't eaten in days, which, to be fair, may be true. The bread beside your bowl is the same loaf as this morning, still hard, still a threat to your dental stability. You dunk it in the stew and hope it softens before you lose a molar. You chew cautiously. There's something fibrous, maybe a leak, maybe not. You don't ask. Asking ruins the illusion. On a really lucky day, someone brings meat, a rabbit snared in the woods, a chicken that stopped laying eggs, maybe a pig's foot salvaged from the market floor. Meat is precious and usually boiled until it resembles a sock, but it adds flavor and protein and a rare sense of triumph. Most days, it's just grains and vegetables. Cabbage, onions, barley, root vegetables that taste like wet dirt. You've eaten more turnips than any human should. You once hallucinated a conversation with a parsnip. It was not polite. And the bread. Let's talk about the bread. It's made from coarse rye filled with filler ingredients, bark, sawdust, sometimes ground beans to stretch the flour. You've heard of ergot poisoning a nasty fungus that grows on rye and causes hallucination, seizures, and sometimes death. But no one calls it that. They just say someone was touched by the spirits and bury them with garlic and a rock under their tongue. You drink your ale, trying to wash it all down. It's warm, it's flat, it has chunks, but at least it doesn't make you violently ill. Probably. Water, as you know, is still out to kill you. Dessert is not a concept. If you want sweet, you better hope someone has honey or dried fruit. Once on a feast day, you ate a honey cake so good you cried. Then your brother stole it, and you cried for different reasons. Every so often you hear about spices. Cinnamon, pepper, saffron. These are for kings and popes. You've never seen them. You've only heard about them in stories told by traveling merchants with suspiciously white teeth. Your food tastes like whatever it's been cooked in, usually soot iron and smoke. Salt is valuable. If you have it, you hoard it. If you don't, you pretend your soup is naturally bland. You've eaten spoiled meat before. Everyone has. You just scrape off the green parts and pray. There's no refrigeration. No way to keep things cold unless it's winter and the ground is frozen. In summer, things spoil fast. But food is food, and hunger is persuasive. That strange smell character. That slimy texture flavor. Sometimes the market has cheese, sometimes. Usually it's hard as a rock and smells like someone's foot, wrapped in sadness. You eat it anyway, because it's not a turnip. Historians still debate how nutritious the average peasant diet was. You get enough calories, barley and beer will do that, but vitamins, balanced nutrition, that's a fantasy. Scurvy, rickets, and various deficiencies roam the village like uninvited dinner guests. You eat fast. Not because you're Russian, but because the food cools quickly and cold stew is somehow worse. The firelight flickers. Your family slurps. No one talks much. Mouths are full or teeth are sore. You hear a gurgling from someone's stomach. You all pretend not to. Later someone will burp loudly. Someone else will groan and lie on their side, clutching their midsection. It's hard to tell if it's indigestion or something worse. Could be gas, could be plague. You never really know. You scrape your bowl clean with your last bit of bread. The dog licks the floor. Your cousin tries to lick the pot. Grandma swats him. You drink one final gulp of ale and wipe your mouth with your sleeve. You're full. Technically, you're not satisfied. You're never satisfied. But you're not starving tonight, and that's enough. For now, you wake to the sound of bells. Not an alarm clock, not a rooster. Bells. Always the bells. They toll for morning prayers, noon devotionals, vespers, funerals, and sometimes just because the priest had a moment. Your life in 1325 is ruled not by choice, but by chime. The church isn't just a building. It's your calendar, your government, your newspaper, and your watch. It tells you when to work, when to stop, what to eat, what not to eat, what to fear, and what to feel guilty about. Spoiler, it's most things. You don't question this. No one does. Religion is as much a part of your life as dirt under your nails or fleas in your bedding. You've never read the Bible. You can't read. But you know the stories. You've heard them from the pulpit, from your parents, from village gossip, twisted into divine parables. Noah and his ark. Saints martyred in imaginative ways. Christ's suffering, which honestly feels pretty relatable. You cross yourself before you eat. You mumble a prayer when you sneeze. You bless the goat when it births without incident. Every action is infused with ritual repetition and the faint scent of incense. The church sits at the heart of your village, literally and metaphorically. It's the only stone building for miles, cold and echoing, with high arched ceilings and a faint smell of moldy wood and beeswax. The windows are small and grimy. The priest's voice bounces around like it's trying to escape. Mass is mandatory. You go every Sunday dressed in your best, which means your tunic has slightly fewer holes. You stand through the whole thing, knees, aching hands clenched, trying to stay awake. You don't understand the Latin, no one does, but you nod along anyway. This is the performance. This is salvation bought one murmur at a time. You confess your sins, often, loudly, even if you're not sure what you did. Thought something unholy, confess. Laughed too much, confess. Saw a goat that made you feel weird. Double confess. Joy is suspicious. Misfortune is divine punishment. Everything good comes from God. Everything bad your fault. Miss Mass. You're a sinner. Eat meat on a Friday, sinner. Question the priest, dangerous. Say something weird during a thunderstorm, witch. The line between piety and paranoia is razor thin, and you're dancing on it every day in your itchy, damp shoes. You fast. A lot. Lent, Advent. Ember Days. Saints' Days. Your calendar is full of reasons to not eat, or to only eat fish, or to only eat things that technically aren't meat like beavers. Yes, someone argued that beavers counted as fish because they lived in water. The church allowed it. Fish Fridays just got weird. The rituals are comforting in a way. Predictable. You light candles for the dead. You make the sign of the cross when you pass a graveyard. You whisper prayers when someone is sick. And when someone dies, which happens often, you gather around, chant, and hope the priest shows up in time to give last rites. The idea of hell is not abstract. It's vivid. It's terrifying. You've seen paintings of demons pulling sinners into flames, gouging eyes and boiling souls like bad eggs. These are not metaphors. These are warnings. Your fear of eternal damnation is as real as your fear of wolves and tax collectors. You wear a small wooden cross carved by your cousin. You kiss it before bed. You clutch it during storms. You once prayed to it when your brother got caught in a fever. He lived. You now believe that cross has power. You won't let anyone touch it. The priest is both revered and feared. He knows Latin. He owns books. He sometimes gets wine. He has more education than everyone combined and a tendency to judge people silently from the pulpit. If you make eye contact, you immediately assume you're going to hell. Tithes are expected. 1/10 of what you have. Not just money, but eggs, grain, wool, whatever the village grows, the church gets a slice. You grumble, but you give. Everyone does. You've seen what happens to those who don't. Confession is public, sometimes whispered in corners, sometimes shouted in shame. You once watched your neighbor confess to stealing a turnip. He was made to kneel in the mud for an hour. Another confessed to unnatural thoughts and vanished a week later. You don't ask questions. You just pray harder. Historians still argue whether medieval people were truly devout or just socially coerced into religious obedience. But for you, the lines blur. Faith is habit. Habit is survival. You don't know another way. Even festivals are religious. Saints' days bring music and dancing, but always end with a sermon. Feasts are held under crosses. Marriages are blessed in Latin. Births are followed by urgent baptisms. Unbaptized babies are said to wander purgatory like lost birds. You shiver every time you hear it. And yet, despite the fear, the guilt, the rigid structure, you find peace in it. The routine, the candles, the hymns sung off key, the smell of old wood and melted wax, the hope that someone somewhere is listening. You close your eyes at night and whisper the same words you've said since you could talk. Protect me, Lord. Forgive me, Lord. Wake me if I must wake. Take me if I must go. Then the bells ring again, because they always do. If you wake up in 1325 and you happen to be a woman, congratulations, your life just got significantly harder. Not that it's easy for anyone in this era, but for women, the Middle Ages aren't just uncomfortable. They're a full-on obstacle course of survival suppression and societal scrutiny. You're 12 years old and people are already talking about marriage. Not in the one day when you're ready kind of way. More like we've already spoken to the Miller's family and they have a son who just turned 13. You don't have a choice. Love isn't part of the equation. You are a transaction. A dowry in the form of chickens, blankets, or if your family is ambitious, half a goat. By 14, you're expected to be married. By 15, pregnant. By 16, managing a household. And by 20, if you're not a mother of at least 2 children, people start whispering, maybe you're barren, maybe cursed, maybe secretly a witch. Childbirth is terrifying. There's no hospital, no trained doctor, no sterile anything. You lie on a mat or a rough wooden board, while other women, your mother and aunt, the neighbor, with the steady hands gather around. No pain relief, no privacy, just hot cloths, whispered prayers, and the ever-present threat that either you or the baby or both won't survive. The midwife knows a dozen home remedies. Honey vinegar powdered roots, even toad ashes in desperate cases. Sometimes they help, sometimes they don't. Screaming is normal. Bleeding is expected. Death is common. You're told childbirth is your divine duty. If you suffer, it's Eve's fault. If you die, it's God's will. You are both sacred and expendable. And if you do survive, congratulations now, you get to raise a child while hauling water, grinding grain, mending clothes, cooking, tending animals, and still somehow contributing to the harvest. There's no maternity leave. There's barely time to sleep. You breastfeed while kneading bread. You change rags while stoking fires. You carry one child on your hip while another tugs at your skirt, and a third throws turnips at the goat. Education, huh? Boys might learn to read if their family can afford a tutor or send them to the monastery. Girls, you learn how to spin wool, mix herbs, and say your prayers. If you're lucky, maybe your brother teaches you letters in secret. But if anyone finds out, they'll say you're getting ideas, dangerous ones. You're told to be obedient, to be modest, to lower your gaze, to speak softly. Too loud and you're shamed. Too quiet and you're suspicious. You must be pious but not proud. Humble but not invisible. Useful but never defiant. Complain too much and suddenly someone finds a reason to accuse you of witchcraft. Maybe the bread didn't rise. Maybe the cow stopped giving milk. Maybe someone's child got sick. Doesn't take much. One wrong look, one misunderstood word, and you could be tied to a post, doused in holy water, or worse. You've seen it happen. A woman with a sharp tongue is forced to wear a metal scold's bridle, a muzzle with a plate that presses down on her tongue. Another had to parade through the village with a sign labeling her a gossip. Public shaming is real and brutal. Men work hard, yes, but their bodies are their own. Their voices carry weight. Their choices limited though they maybe exist. You live by permission. Your fathers, your husbands, the priests. Even your widowhood, should you live. That long comes with rules. Historians still argue whether women in the Middle Ages had more agency than we assume managing estates, running businesses, leading religious orders. And yes, some did, but not here, not in your village. Here you are defined by the men around you and the womb inside you. And yet you survive. You laugh with the other women at the well. You share herbs and secrets. You learn how to stitch a wound, how to calm a fever, how to turn a handful of weeds into soup. You find pride in your skill, your strength, your silence. You make things from nothing. You hold families together. You sneak bits of honey for your children. You hum lullabies no one taught you. You hide your tears during thunder and your prayers during childbirth. You teach your daughters how to walk without being seen, and how to speak without being heard, and how to stay alive. Because being a woman in 1325 isn't just hard. It's a constant grinding test of endurance. And somehow, even when the world demands everything from you, you give more. You gather your skirts, you carry the child, you stir the pot, and you keep going. It's another quiet afternoon until it isn't. Someone's screaming in the village square and you don't even flinch. In 1325, that kind of noise just means the local justice system is doing its thing. And by justice, we mean someone's getting publicly humiliated, maimed, or worse. You wander over with the rest of the crowd. Not because you're bloodthirsty, but because there's nothing else to do. Public punishment is the closest thing to entertainment. And today, it looks like someone stole a loaf of bread. Again. This time, the punishment is a hand. A man kneels before a wooden block, his face a mask of dirt and regret. The constable who doubles as the butcher, depending on the day, raises his axe. A drumbeat of murmurs pulses through the villagers. The blade falls. A scream. A cheer. Someone faints. And then everyone goes back to their chores like it's just Tuesday. Because it is. This isn't unusual. Violence is woven into the fabric of daily life. There's no police force. No appeals process. No Miranda rights. If you're accused of a crime, your fate depends on your status, your reputation, and whether the priest likes your family. Steal from the Lord, hang. Disrespect the priest, stocks and lashes. Gossip too much. You might get a scold's bridle strapped to your head, a metal cage that clamps your tongue, literally silencing you in front of your neighbors. Accused of lying. It's time for a trial by ordeal. You're handed a red-hot iron bar and told to carry it a few paces. Then your burned hands are wrapped in cloth. 3 days later, they're inspected. If they're healing cleanly, God has found you innocent. If they're infected well, guilty. Science. Another favorite trial by water. You're tied up and tossed into a pond. If you float, you're a witch and must be executed. If you sink, congratulations, you're innocent. Also possibly dead, but innocent. You once watched a man whipped in front of the church for cursing during a feast day. He had 10 lashes. By lash 5, he passed out. The priest kept count. Mercy is not a standard feature. Even children aren't spared. A boy caught picking apples from the manor orchard was beaten with a switch and made to carry a sign reading thief for a week. His father thanked the steward. Teaches him right, he said, while the boy bled quietly into his tunic. Domestic violence, not even called that. A husband striking his wife is considered discipline. A parent beating a child is called parenting. Violence isn't just tolerated, it's expected. A normal part of order. Pain is correction. Blood is clarity. Executions are public spectacles. A hanging draws the whole village. People bring bread, children climb fences, and someone always tries to sell pickled eggs. You're told it's justice, but deep down you know it's theater. A warning in flesh and bone. Some punishments are more creative. A woman accused of slander is paraded through town, wearing a wooden yoke decorated with rotten vegetables. A man who cheated on his tithes is made to crawl on hands and knees to the altar. Public shame is as sharp as any blade. Historians still argue whether medieval law was harsher in practice or just more visible. What's clear is that consequences come quick, loud, and without much room for debate. You avoid eye contact with the Lord's men. They carry short swords and long grudges. If they catch you in the wrong place at the wrong time, your best hope is a bribe. If not gold, then grain, or favors, or silence. Duels happen too illegal, but popular. Two men fighting over land honor a pig. Fists, knives, clubs. Someone always loses. Sometimes both. And even then, someone's cousin might seek revenge a week later behind the barn under the moonlight. Justice rarely ends cleanly. The church offers sanctuary in theory. If you make it inside before you're caught, you can claim protection. But only for a while. Eventually, someone will drag you out, or smoke you out, or just wait until you starve. Witch trials are rare, but the fear is constant. A midwife whose herbs fail, a widow who talks to cats, a girl who dreams too vividly, all suspicious. You've learned not to stand out. Keep your voice low, your hands busy, and your opinions unspoken. And yet somehow life continues. You laugh. You sing. You help your neighbor mend a fence. You whisper jokes at the market. You bury your horror beneath routine. Because what else can you do? Violence is routine, but so is endurance. You head home walking past the blood-stained post in the square. The chickens are pecking near it like nothing happened. A child kicks a stone. The sky glows pink with dusk, and in the distance a bell rings. You see another funeral this morning. It's the third this week. No one cries too loudly. No one's surprised. In 1325, death is as familiar as bread. Maybe more so. You're surrounded by it, from the moment you're born to the moment you don't wake up. And if you make it past 40, you're basically a walking miracle. The body lies wrapped in linen face, barely visible beneath the folds. The priest murmurs prayers, flicking holy water over the shrouded form. A few villagers stand around, hats off, heads down. No fancy coffin, no marble headstone. Just a wooden box if you're lucky, or a shallow hole in the ground. They bury fast. The smell doesn't wait. The ground isn't deep. And there's always the worry that dogs, or worse, might dig something up if you're not careful. Graves are marked with stones, crosses, if the family can spare one. But over time, even those fade. Most people are eventually forgotten. Just one more name whispered briefly, then lost. Child mortality is brutal. You've had siblings die before they could walk. Babies born too soon, too small, or just too unlucky. There's no prenatal care, no sterilized tools, no incubators. Birth is a gamble with death, and not everyone wins. Your friend's sister died in childbirth last month. She was 16. Her baby lived for 3 days. You don't talk about it much. There's no time. Another field to tend, another bucket to haul. Grief gets folded into routine, hidden between chores and supper and prayers that start to feel mechanical. You light a candle. You murmur the names. You move on. Plague is always in the background. Sometimes it's distant, a rumor from the next county. Sometimes it hits home, fast, ugly. You've seen people drop within hours, boils, fevers, bleeding, the smell, the silence afterward. Whole houses emptied and boarded up. Fires lit in the streets as if smoke can scare off death. Famine. That too. One bad harvest and everyone's tightening belts that already don't fit. Bread gets thinner. Soup stretches further. Some turn to bark, boiled roots, even dirt. Children's cheeks shrink. Eyes look older than they should. People stop visiting each other. Laughter disappears. Even the church feels quieter. And then there are accidents. Falling from a ladder. Kicked by a horse. Bitten by something you thought was sleeping. A scratch that festers. A cold that turns to fever. There are no ambulances, no emergency rooms. You either survive or you don't. Suicides happen. Quietly. Unspoken. A man walks into the woods and doesn't come back. A woman walks into the river. No one asks, but everyone knows. You pray harder that week. There's no retirement, no pension. You don't grow old in the sense we imagine now. You work until your body fails. Then you sit. You wither. And one day, you don't wake up. If you're lucky, your family's nearby. If not, a neighbor finds you by the fire stiff and still. To live past 50 is rare. To live past 60 is legend. You know one old man with white hair and a spine that bends like a question mark. People treat him like a relic. They ask him for stories. He mostly talks about hunger and lost friends. Still, he's proof it can happen. You try not to hope. Your own body reminds you. Every cough feels heavier. Every cut takes longer to heal. Your knees ache. Your back stiffens. You wake more at night listening to owls and wind and your own heartbeat. You wonder how long it'll keep going. You think about your legacy. You don't have money. You don't have books or art or titles. You have a child, maybe two. You've taught them to till soil, to knead dough, to whisper prayers. That's something. You think about the saints, about heaven, about whether the good you've done is enough, whether your forgotten sins will catch up, whether the priest will come in time. Funerals are fast, a few words, a quick burial. Life can't stop. Not for long. There's grain to store, a fence to mend, bread to bake. The dog still needs feeding. Death is not a surprise. It's not an interruption. It's a rhythm, an accepted beat in the background of everything. You know it's coming. You've seen it 100 times. You just hope when it arrives, someone lights a candle and remembers your name. And if they don't, you hope they at least cover you well enough so the dog doesn't dig you up. The year is now 1744, and you are not a mud-caked peasant in a drafty hut. You are a teenage girl in satin slippers, a minor German princess named Sophie Friederike Auguste von Anhalt-Zerbst. Try saying that 3 times fast. Your mother is ambitious, almost aggressively so. She drags you across Europe to Russia, a place of icy winters, unpredictable czars, and suspicious courtiers, all in hopes that you'll charm your way into a crown. You're not the first girl to try, but you might be the first to win. At age 15, you're engaged to the heir to the Russian throne, Grand Duke Peter, nephew of the childless Empress Elizabeth. It sounds glamorous. It's not. Peter is complicated, immature, awkward, fond of toy soldiers, possibly unstable, definitely not charming. Historians still argue whether he was mentally unfit or just incredibly annoying. You learn to smile through it. You convert to Orthodoxy, changing your name to Ekaterina Alexeyevna Catherine. You practice Russian, late into the night reading military histories under your covers while everyone else sleeps. You understand something most don't power is never handed to you. You have to make people want to give it to you. The court is cold in more ways than one. Every glance is loaded, every compliment a calculation. Your mother hovers, pushing you into alliances. The empress eyes you like a hawk wearing a tiara. Your marriage is a ceremony, not a connection. You say your vows. You smile for the crowd. Inside you start planning. Peter finally becomes emperor in 1762 and promptly implodes. He's erratic, obsessed with Prussia, and not great at the whole winning hearts and minds thing. Within months, he's alienated the army, the nobility, and most of polite society. You see your chance. While Peter is busy irritating everyone, you're gathering allies. Quietly, strategically, officers, bishops, ministers. You charm them. You listen. You promise stability. And when the time comes, you act. A bloodless coup. You wearing a military uniform and astride a horse, proclaim yourself empress. The soldiers cheer. The clergy bless you. Peter signs his abdication. Days later, he's dead under mysterious circumstances. You don't ask questions. You move forward. Now you are Catherine II, Empress of Russia, not by birth, not by inheritance, by will. You begin your reign with vision, Enlightenment ideals, mixed with hard pragmatism. You correspond with Voltaire. You read Rousseau. You also know how to wield an iron fist while wearing lace gloves. You reform government administration, expand education, and modernize the legal system. You commission the nakaz, a massive document laying out enlightened legal principles. It's radical ahead of its time and mostly ignored by the nobility. But you tried. You found new towns. You invite European scholars. You polish Russia's image for the Western world. You also crush rebellions, annex territories, and cement your status as one of the most formidable rulers on earth. You take lovers, many, not secretly but openly, strategically. Some are ambitious nobles, some are charming officers, some are glorified man candles. You reward them with titles, estates, influence. But make no mistake, you are in charge. Always. Historians still debate whether Catherine was a true reformer or a clever autocrat wrapped in Enlightenment branding. The truth is complex. You believed in progress, but you also believed in control. You freed some peasants, then crushed revolts. You spoke of liberty, then expanded serfdom. You walked the line between philosopher queen and ruthless empress like it was a ballroom floor. Your biggest triumph, expanding Russia's borders. Under your reign, the empire grows dramatically into Crimea, into Poland, into the Black Sea coast. You turn Russia from a frozen outpost into a true European power. You commission art. You collect books. You build the Hermitage, one of the greatest museums in the world. You shape culture while commanding armies. You play chess on a geopolitical scale. You outlive your enemies, outlast your critics. You rule for over 30 years. And when you finally die in 1796, you leave behind an empire larger than any other woman in history ever commanded. People call you Catherine the Great, but you didn't inherit that title. You earned it. And yes, centuries later, rumors still swirl about your private life, your ambition, your contradictions. Some people want to reduce you to scandal, but those people never sat on a throne and made the world listen. You weren't perfect, you weren't gentle, but you were powerful, brilliant, and absolutely unforgettable. And in a world that tried to hand you nothing, you took everything. The jungle breathes heavy around you, thick, hot, alive. Vines dangle like sleeping serpents. Cicadas buzz like ancient machines. And ahead, half swallowed by the green rises, a crumbling limestone pyramid, Temple Thit of Palanque. You duck through the narrow corridor, the air turning cooler, denser as mossy stone closes in. Every step echoes like you're trespassing, because you are. This place wasn't meant for you. It was built for gods, for kings, for the dead. And here deep beneath the jungle canopy in a tomb, untouched for over 1,000 years, archaeologists find her. She is draped in red, not cloth, not paint, but fine sacred cinnabar, a mercury-based powder, vibrant and poisonous, covering her bones. Her face, her very breath, in death. Her skin long gone, but the shape of her remains regal, peaceful, powerful. She is immediately dubbed the Red Queen. No one knows her name. There's no inscription, no stela proclaiming her conquests, no carved list of husbands or children or dates. Just the red powder, the jade mask pressed to her face, and a silence so deep it hums. She was buried with offerings, shells, pearls, obsidian blades, ceremonial axes, delicate beads, items that say this woman mattered. She was sacred. She was remembered. Next to her, the remains of a young girl and an older woman, possibly servants or companions, maybe sacrifices. Their bones curled like commas in her story. Her tomb is separate, but near the great temple of the inscriptions, where King Pakal lies in eternal stone. That's no accident. Was she his queen, his mother, his rival? Historians still argue. Theories swirl like smoke. Some believe she was Tsakbu Ajao Pakal's wife, royal consort turned queen regent. Others think she was a powerful priestess, perhaps a blood relative with her own line of rule. Still others whisper she was more than royalty, something divine. DNA evidence is scarce, fragmented, unreliable. The cinnabar makes analysis harder. The tomb offers clues, but no answers. She resists certainty. Her story is told in what's missing. Her bones speak, though. She was middle-aged. Her teeth worn, her spine curved from years of labor or ritual. Her skull reshaped, flattened at the back in that distinctly Maya tradition of noble identity. And her mask, carved from precious jade, placed gently over her face, is not for disguise, it's for immortality. Jade for the Maya symbolized breath, life, rebirth. to die with jade in your mouth or across your eyes meant you were returning to the divine, ascending. And she did not ascend quietly. The Red Queen's burial chamber is designed with intention. Red paint on the walls, glyphs long eroded, but still echoing a sacred geometry. Her presence feels more ceremonial than political, like a ritual sealed in stone. You picture her in life, clad in embroidered cotton, heavy necklaces, obsidian rings, her hair twisted high, her gaze level. She walks through temple corridors with quiet authority, the crowd parting before her like reeds in the river. She speaks in riddles. She conducts bloodletting rituals beneath the full moon, offering drops of royal blood to the gods through thorns and obsidian shards. She dances barefoot in ceremonies that bind earth and sky. Her fingers leave crimson stains on sacred cloth. Her voice sings the names of stars. Or maybe she didn't. Maybe she ruled quietly from the shadows. A strategist, a scribe, a widow holding the throne for a son not yet ready. Maybe her power was born of grief. Maybe she was placed in red, not because of how she lived, but because of how fiercely she held on when the world fell apart. She was buried with care, with reverence. Whoever laid her to rest did so with love or fear or both, the kind of burial reserved for the elite, the divine, the unforgettable, and yet no name. We remember kings. We carve their faces into stone. We write their deeds in books. But this woman, she is remembered only in silence and color. A ghost in scarlet dust. Her tomb, once sealed in darkness, now floods with electric light and tourists. But still she keeps her secrets. The cinnabar clings to everything. Every researcher who touches her leaves with a bit of her. A whisper on their gloves, a particle on their clothes. And she remains. The Red Queen is not famous like Cleopatra. She left no poems, no manifestos, no infamous love affairs. She is not a historical celebrity. She is something rarer, a presence. You don't need to know her name to feel her. She lies there still in her ruby chamber, beneath the jungle, untouched by time eyes, hidden behind jade. A queen with no kingdom left. A mystery swaddled in poison and reverence. And when you close your eyes, you can almost hear her breathing. As the last echoes of the Red Queen's breath settle into silence, your world begins to soften. The jungle fades. The palace doors close. The bells of medieval towns stop ringing. Fires dwindle to embers. Fields go quiet. The noise of centuries falls away, leaving just the slow rhythm of your own heartbeat. You've seen lives born in huts and buried in linen. You've walked through smoke and rot and wonder. You've survived pottage and plague, frostbite and superstition. You've sat beside queens cloaked in red and empresses cloaked in strategy. And now you get to rest. Let your muscles ease. Let the scratch of wool fade into memory. Let the ache in your jaw from chewing that impossibly hard bread dissolve into a smile. You've earned it. All those voices, peasants, scribes, mothers, rebels, soldiers, and monarchs. They're whispering now, not demanding. Their stories still flicker in the dark, but gently like candlelight in a quiet chapel. You don't need to carry their weight anymore. Just let your breath slow. Let your thoughts blur at the edges. Let your body sink heavy safe into whatever you're lying on. Mattress, mat straw piled tonight, it's a throne. You are ruler of nothing but peace, and that is enough. So sleep now, with no lice, no leeches, no chamber pots overhead, just stars above, cool air on your cheek, and the long winding hush of history curling soft as smoke. Good night.